My parents gave my sister $80,000, then used my name to steal the trust, so I released the audit. I'm 33 now, and for the first time in my life, I actually understand what peace feels like. But if you told me 2 years ago that I'd be living in a $5 million house on a quiet street far away from my family, I would have laughed. Back then, I was still trying to earn something I didn't realize I never needed: my parents' approval. My name's Noah, and this is the story of how my family taught me that sometimes walking away is the best kind of revenge. Growing up, my sister Emma and I couldn't have been more different. She was loud, charming, and always knew how to get people to like her. I was the quieter one, the kid who read books at the dinner table and preferred to spend weekends fixing old computers instead of going out. My parents used to say, "Emma's our sunshine," and I used to joke that made me the cloud. It stopped being funny around the time I realized they actually meant it. Emma was the golden child in every sense. When she wanted to take ballet, they bought her custom shoes and paid for private lessons. When I wanted to join a robotics club, they told me it was too expensive for a hobby that won't lead anywhere. She got a car at 17, I got a bus pass. It wasn't jealousy at first, just confusion. I thought maybe if I worked hard enough, they'd notice me too. So I did. I got straight A's, landed a full scholarship to a state university, and even graduated early. The first thing Mom said when I told her was, "Good, that means you can start paying your own bills sooner." I wish I could say I exaggerated, but that tone became the soundtrack of my 20s. Every call home was a reminder that Emma's milestones were celebrations, while mine were obligations. When she got engaged at 26, my parents threw a massive engagement party. I'm talking about catered food, decorations, a photographer, the works. When I told them I'd just been promoted to senior developer at my company, Dad just said, "Well, don't get comfortable. Companies replace people all the time." The wedding talk started a year later. Emma wanted a dream ceremony, outdoor venue, designer dress, over 100 guests. My parents couldn't stop bragging about how proud they were to make it happen. I still remember the afternoon Mom called me and said almost casually, "We're helping Emma with some of the costs. It's only fair. You know how expensive weddings are these days?" I didn't think much of it until I visited home a few weeks later. Dad was sitting at the kitchen table, calculator in hand, muttering numbers under his breath. There were receipts everywhere: floral arrangements, deposits, catering. When I glanced over his shoulder, I caught sight of the total: $80,000. I actually froze. "You're giving her 80 grand for her wedding?" I asked. Mom looked up from her tea like it was nothing. "Of course. It's a big day for her. She deserves it." "And what about me?" I said, half joking. Mom's smile faded. "Noah, you don't need help. You're single. You don't even like parties. You've always been fine on your own." That sentence, "you've always been fine on your own," stuck in my head like a splinter. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just sat there feeling like I'd been quietly written out of my own family story. Over the next few months, I tried to shake it off. I told myself it didn't matter that money wasn't love and that Emma could have her fairy tale day. But when I saw the wedding photos later, the resentment hit me like a freight train. There was my entire family smiling in expensive suits, the venue decorated with white roses and chandeliers, my parents beaming like they'd just married off royalty. I wasn't invited to the rehearsal dinner, and my name wasn't even mentioned in the speeches. One of Emma's friends later told me my parents said I couldn't make it because I was too busy with work. I wasn't. I was home staring at my ceiling, realizing they hadn't even bothered to ask. For the first time, I stopped calling. I skipped Christmas that year, sent a simple "hope everyone's well" text, and focused on work. I poured every ounce of frustration into my projects. Long nights, quiet mornings, endless caffeine. I climbed faster than anyone expected. When the company was acquired by a major tech firm, I got a payout I still struggle to wrap my head around. It wasn't generational wealth, but it was enough to change my life overnight. Around that time, I met Maya, a real estate agent with the kind of sharp humor that made you forget your own bitterness. We clicked instantly. For the first time, someone actually believed in me without conditions. We bought a modest home together at first, and when I told her about my family, she said something I'll never forget. "You keep trying to buy their love, Noah. Maybe it's time you invest in yourself instead." That hit hard. So I did. I started a software consultancy with a small team of people I trusted. Within a year, it exploded. Clients from all over the world, contracts worth more than I'd ever imagined. The kind of success my parents never believed I'd achieve. Not that they were around to see it. I kept my distance. No visits, no calls. Just polite messages here and there when birthdays came up. Then, one afternoon, 2 years after Emma's wedding, I got a text from an unknown number. "Hey Noah, it's Mom. Please call me when you can. It's important." I stared at the screen for a while, debating whether to respond. Something about the wording felt off, that forced politeness she used when she needed something. Against my better judgment, I called. Her voice came through tight and shaky. "Noah, did you buy a new house?" I blinked. Yeah, how do you know?" There was a pause, then a muffled sound like she was covering the phone, followed by a trembling sigh. "Your sister drove by it. She said it's big. Noah, really big. Is it true?" "Mom, what are you talking about?" "She said it's worth $5 million. Her voice cracked on the word million. She called me crying. "Noah!" She kept asking, "Why does he have that? How is that fair?" I didn't say anything for a few seconds. I could almost picture it. Emma's car slowing down in front of my gate, her hand flying to her mouth, realizing the brother she once pitied now lived better than anyone in the family. Mom's tone changed, soft but heavy with accusation. "You know it's not nice to flaunt your money like that. Your sister's been struggling since the baby came. Maybe you could help her out a little. She's your only sister after all." There it was, the familiar script, word for word, the same pattern I'd heard my entire life. Emma gets the sympathy, and I get the guilt trip. "Mom," I said slowly, "you told me I didn't deserve help, remember?" Her silence on the other end was deafening. The thing about family betrayal is that it doesn't always come with shouting or drama. Sometimes it's quiet, a lifetime of small dismissals that pile up until they form a wall. And that day, standing by my window, watching the sun dip over the trees in my backyard, I realized I was finally on the other side of it. But I didn't hang up yet, because deep down, I wanted to hear what she'd say next. The part where the entitlement turned into demand, where the mask slipped just enough to reveal what my family really thought of me. Now, that's when she said it, the sentence that changed everything. And that's exactly where everything began to unravel. Mom's voice cracked, like she'd been rehearsing it in front of the mirror. "Noah, your sister's going through a tough time. Her husband lost his job a few months ago, and they've been barely keeping up with their mortgage. She's scared they'll lose the house. I told her you might be able to." "Stop." I didn't raise my voice, but it was enough to make her pause. "You told her what exactly?" "That you might be able to help," she said quickly, as if saying it fast would make it sound harmless. "You're doing so well, and she's your family. It's what family does. You have to understand how hard it's been for them, especially after the baby." So she drives past my home, calls you crying about how unfair it is, and your solution is for me to bail her out. She's emotional, Noah. Don't twist my words. That was the thing about my mother. She always managed to make me feel like I was the unreasonable one. Every time I tried to set a boundary, she found a way to turn it into guilt. Even through the phone, I could almost see her expression, that practiced frown she used when she wanted to sound disappointed instead of manipulative. "You've always been so distant," she continued. "We barely hear from you anymore. You don't visit, you don't come home for holidays, and now you're living in that mansion all alone. What's the point of success if you can't share it with your family?" That line, "What's the point of success?" hit me differently, because she wasn't asking about happiness. She was talking about access. I could hear Emma in the background now. Her voice was muffled, but loud enough to make out bits and pieces. "Tell him. Just tell him to stop acting like he's better than everyone. We're drowning, and he's sitting there in his fancy house doing nothing." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. For the next few weeks, I tried to brush it off, but that phone call dug under my skin like a splinter. Every few days, I get another message, sometimes from Mom, sometimes from Dad, occasionally even from Emma. The tone was always the same, polite at first, then guilt-laced, then outright passive-aggressive. Dad's first message said, "Your sister's under a lot of pressure, son. Be the bigger person." Mom's next one said, "You've changed, Noah. Money's made you cold." And Emma's, "I can't believe you'd watch your family struggle like this after everything our parents did for you, after everything they did for me." The irony nearly made me laugh. See, I never resented the money itself, not really. I resented the message behind it, that my worth had always been conditional, that love came with a receipt and an asterisk. I built my life on proving I could stand on my own, but somehow that made me the villain. It didn't stop there. A month later, I got an invitation in the mail. Thick ivory cardstock, gold embossed edges, fancy cursive script. Baby Noah's first birthday. Yeah, she named her son after me. At first, I thought it was some kind of peace offering, maybe her way of extending an olive branch. I almost convinced myself to go, but when I called to ask about it, Mom answered instead of Emma. "Oh, you got the invite," she said, cheerfully, too cheerfully. "Emma's so excited. It's going to be a big day. The whole family will be there." "Yeah, I saw." "I was just wondering, is there a gift registry or something?" There was a pause. "Oh, we don't want you to buy anything," she said, lowering her voice like she was saying something sensitive. "Emma actually thought maybe instead of a gift, you could contribute to something more meaningful." I knew where this was going before she said it. She and Jacob are still trying to catch up on bills, and you know the baby needs a stable home. It would mean so much if you could help them out a little. You don't have to make a big show of it, just quietly help. Quietly help, as if the secrecy made it noble instead of manipulative. I didn't even bother asking how much. I just told her I wouldn't be attending. That's when she snapped. "You're being cruel, Noah. Do you know how embarrassing this is for me? For your father? Everyone knows you're doing well, and now you can't even show your face because you're too proud to help your own sister?" "I'm not proud," I said flatly. "I'm done." And I meant it. But the thing about boundaries is that people who've benefited from crossing them don't respect them easily. 2 days before the party, Dad called me. The voice of reason, or at least he liked to think so. "Son, I'm not taking sides here," he began, which was his way of saying he absolutely was. "But your sister's going through a rough patch. She's made mistakes, sure, but who hasn't? We all have to look out for each other." "I did that for 30 years, I said. "All it got me was ignored." He sighed. "You know, when we helped Emma, we didn't do it to hurt you. We did it because she needed it more. You were always the independent one. We figured you didn't want our help." "Yeah," I said quietly. And that assumption became pretty convenient for everyone, didn't it? He didn't have an answer for that. The day of the birthday party came and went. I spent it hiking with Maya. No phone, no family, no guilt. But when I got home that evening, I had 17 missed calls. 5 from Mom, 6 from Dad, and the rest from numbers I didn't recognize. There were texts too. Pictures from the party, comments like, "Wish you were here, Uncle Noah," and one from Emma that said, "You made things awkward. Everyone asked why you didn't show up. Thanks for ruining my son's birthday." I didn't respond, but I could feel the anger simmering just below the surface. Not hot enough to explode, just enough to burn slow. Weeks passed. The messages stopped. Silence, finally. I started to think maybe it was over. Then, in early spring, my phone buzzed while I was in a meeting. It was a voicemail from Mom. I almost ignored it, but something in her tone, the way she said my name, made me listen. "Noah, honey, I need you to call me back. Please. It's about Emma. She's been so upset lately and, well, she might do something drastic if this keeps going. She feels like you hate her. Can't you just talk to her? Maybe invite her over. Let her see you're not angry. Please, for me." That last part, for me, was a knife disguised as kindness. Maya saw my face after I listened to it. "What happened?" she asked softly. "They're trying to use guilt as currency again," I said, "and they think I'll fall for it. Will you?" I shook my head. "Not this time." But even as I said it, something in me felt uneasy because I knew my mother. If emotional manipulation didn't work, she'd escalate. And she did. A week later, she showed up at my gate unannounced, standing there in a floral dress like it was Sunday brunch. When I stepped outside, she smiled as if nothing had happened. "I just wanted to see you," she said, peering past me toward the house. It's beautiful, Noah. You've really done well for yourself. Thanks, I said cautiously. She nodded, taking it all in. The wide driveway, the manicured hedges, the quiet hum of success. Then her expression shifted. You know, she said softly, Emma drove by here the other day. She was crying for hours. She kept saying she didn't understand how things ended up this way, how her brother got everything and she got left behind. I didn't say anything. Mom took a deep breath. You don't have to give her money. Just talk to her. Let her see inside. She feels like you're punishing her by shutting her out. I couldn't help it. I laughed. She's the one who called me arrogant, who told people I only made money because I got lucky in tech. She made her bed, Mom. That's not fair, she said, her voice rising. You think you're so above us now. We raised you. We made sacrifices for you. That last line, we raised you, was the final straw. No, I said, stepping closer. You raised Emma. You tolerated me. She blinked, her face tightening with something between shock and offense. You don't mean that. I mean every word. She left soon after, but not before saying, You'll regret this one day, Noah. Family is all you have. I watched her car disappear down the street, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No guilt, no sadness, just quiet. But that quiet wouldn't last, because a week later, I got an email. Not from Mom, not from Dad, from Emma's husband, Jacob. Subject line, you owe us an explanation. And what was inside that email, the screenshots, the accusations, the audacity, would set everything in motion. That's where the real war began. The email came in on a Tuesday morning, 8:47 a.m., to be exact. I was halfway through my coffee when I saw the subject line, you owe us an explanation. At first, I thought it was spam. The phrasing was so blunt, so entitled, that it didn't even cross my mind that it could be from Jacob, my brother-in-law, the same guy who once asked me how to turn off the Wi-Fi because the internet's acting slow. But then I noticed the name Jacob P. His address. Her husband. The message started off polite, almost formal. Noah, it began, I've been trying to reach you for weeks, but since you've been ignoring everyone, I thought an email might get your attention. I don't want to start a fight, but this situation has gone too far. I frowned and scrolled down. Emma has been crying every night. She feels betrayed and humiliated. Your parents are heartbroken. You act like we've done something unforgivable, but all we ever did was love you. Now you're out here buying mansions and living large while your family struggles. You could help us, but you choose not to. That's cruel, Noah. There was more, paragraph after paragraph of guilt-laced nonsense. But one line near the bottom made my stomach twist. If you don't want to help willingly, then at least don't make things worse by lying to people about us. Emma told me what you said. I stared at that line for a long time. Lying to people? I hadn't talked about my family to anyone except Maya, and even then, I never exaggerated. So what exactly had Emma told him? Then I reached the last paragraph. Also, we've seen what you're doing online. It's disgusting how you pretend to be generous and humble on social media when, in reality, you've abandoned your own blood. You made us look like fools. Consider this your last chance to make things right before we take it further. I sat back, heart pounding. Take it further? What did that even mean? Maya walked into the office just as I finished reading. You okay? She asked, noticing the look on my face. I handed her my phone. She read silently for a minute, then said, This isn't just guilt-tripping anymore. This is a threat. Yeah, I'm bothered. And I have a bad feeling about what further means. I didn't have to wait long to find out. 2 days later, I woke up to a barrage of notifications, emails, texts, even a few missed calls from colleagues. Something had gone wrong. My stomach dropped as I opened one of the messages from a client. Hey, Noah saw some weird stuff on Facebook this morning. Is everything okay? Facebook. I barely used it. I hadn't posted anything in years. My hands were shaking as I opened the app. The first thing I saw was the post from Emma. It was a long, emotional rant. Paragraphs of half-truths twisted into something ugly. I never thought I'd say this publicly, but I'm at my breaking point. My brother Noah, who grew up with every privilege, has turned his back on his family. While we struggle to pay our bills, he flaunts his wealth and refuses to help, not even for his baby nephew. Money has changed him. He's forgotten who helped him get there. I'm not asking for pity. I just want people to know what kind of person he's become. Attached were 3 photos. One of my house from the outside, one of my car in the driveway, and this one made my blood run cold. A screenshot of an old text I'd sent her years ago when I was still working at my first job. It said, "Someday, I'll make enough that I won't have to ask for anything from anyone ever again." Out of context, it looked arrogant. The post had over 100 likes and dozens of comments. Some sympathetic, some outright nasty. Wow, money really changes people. Can't believe family would do this. Hope karma gets him. I just sat there, staring at the screen, my throat tight. Maya placed a hand on my shoulder. "Noah, we can report it. You don't have to respond." But that wasn't the worst of it, because by that afternoon, I found out she hadn't stopped there. Emma had sent an email to my company, to my partners, to clients. Using her personal account, she'd written that I was under investigation for financial misconduct and that people should be careful doing business with me. She even included fake screenshots of supposed transactions from my consulting firm's account. Numbers she'd clearly made up, but convincing enough at first glance to cause damage. One of my junior partners called me panicked. "Noah, what is this? Did something happen? We're getting calls from clients asking if we're being sued." I spent the next 48 hours putting out fires, calling lawyers, drafting statements explaining that none of it was true. Thankfully, I had records, clean audits, statements, proof of every transaction. But that didn't matter. The damage to my reputation had already begun. It felt personal in a way I'd never experienced before. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about humiliation. And when I thought it couldn't get worse, Mom called. She didn't even sound angry, just exhausted. "Noah, I told you this would happen if you kept ignoring your sister." "You told me," I snapped. "She publicly accused me of financial crimes." "Mom, she's trying to destroy my business. She's hurting," Mom said softly. "You pushed her too far." I laughed bitterly. "So this is my fault now?" Her silence said everything. Something in me cracked then. All those years of being the quiet one, the peacemaker, the one who swallowed his pride just to keep the peace, it all boiled over. "You know what, Mom? I used to think you didn't understand what you were doing, but now I see it. You taught her this. You taught her that she can do anything, say anything, and you'll always defend her. Congratulations. You raised a manipulator." She gasped like I'd hit her. "Don't you dare talk about my daughter like that." "Your daughter," I said quietly. "I stopped being your son a long time ago." I hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every memory replayed in my mind. Every time I'd been dismissed, mocked, or made to feel small. And now, when I'd finally built something of my own, they were trying to tear it down. But it wasn't just emotional anymore. I got an alert from my accountant. Someone had tried to access my company's financial accounts using a password reset request. Twice. The IP address traced back to a small town, the same one where my parents and Emma lived. I sat there staring at the email for a long time, feeling something shift inside me. The kind of cold, deliberate anger that doesn't explode, it calculates. When Maya came downstairs, I was already at my laptop typing. "I'm done playing nice," I said. She didn't stop me, she just nodded. "Then do it right. No shouting, no emotion, just facts." And that's exactly what I did. I started gathering evidence, screenshots of every message, every fake claim, every financial attempt. I documented the company's statements, traced IP logs, contacted my lawyer, and even reached out to a cybersecurity investigator. The results? Let's just say Emma and Jacob had been very careless. They've been using their home Wi-Fi for everything, including the fake emails. Every message they sent, pretending to be anonymous, led straight back to their address. Still, I didn't act immediately. I wanted to make sure that when I struck, it would be irreversible. And then the final straw came. I was on a video call with one of our international clients when he said, almost hesitantly, "Noah, I hate to bring this up, but one of your relatives contacted our company directly, said you've been lying about your credentials." My stomach dropped. Who? He hesitated. She called herself Emma, claimed to be your sister. That was it. She had crossed from petty family drama into full-blown sabotage. I ended the call, closed my laptop, and just sat there for a while, letting the silence settle around me. Outside, the afternoon sun was warm, the world peaceful, completely unaware of the storm building inside me. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm. She wants to ruin my life, I said. Fine, let's see how she likes it when the truth comes out. Maya didn't even ask what I meant. She just said, then it's time. Because by then, I already knew how to end it. Not with anger, not with shouting, but with proof. Real, undeniable proof that would turn the entire family against her and expose exactly what kind of person she'd become. I just needed one last thing before I pulled the trigger. And that came a few days later in the form of an unexpected letter that landed in my mailbox. The return address, my parents' house. The sender, my father. Inside was something that made my hands go cold. Something I hadn't expected to see in 1,000 years. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about Emma anymore. This was about all of them. The envelope was thick, heavier than normal mail. My father's handwriting was neat, deliberate, the kind he used when he wanted to appear calm, even when he wasn't. I sat at the kitchen island, the morning sun filtering through the blinds, just staring at it for a moment before opening it. Something about that letter felt final. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded twice, and a printed document underneath. The first page was written in my father's voice, measured, diplomatic, and dripping with the kind of false civility that always made me uneasy. Noah, your mother and I have talked a lot about everything that's happened. We're worried about how things are spiraling. We can't keep pretending this is just a misunderstanding between siblings. You've cut off communication, isolated yourself, and now you've hired lawyers to threaten your own family. That's not how we raised you. We've decided it's best to formally separate ourselves from any of your business dealings or financial matters. Enclosed is a statement we'll be filing with the county clerk to legally remove our names from any shared property rights or trusts. We hope someday you'll come to your senses and realize family means more than money. Dad. For a moment, I didn't understand. Shared property rights? Trusts? I didn't share anything with them. Not legally. Then I looked at the second document and felt my chest tighten. It was a formal statement of withdrawal from a family trust, one I didn't even know existed. I read it 3 times, trying to process what it meant. My father had listed my name alongside my sister's, theirs, and something called the Patterson Family Fund, apparently established 20 years ago. My name appeared as a beneficiary, but I had never seen or heard of it in my life. When Maya came into the kitchen, I must have looked pale, because she immediately said, "What happened?" I handed her the papers. She read them slowly, her brow furrowing. "Wait, you didn't know about this?" I shook my head. Never even heard of it. We did some digging. Turns out, when my grandparents passed, they left behind a small inheritance. Nothing massive, but enough to set up a family trust. My parents were the executors. Emma and I were the named beneficiaries. But over the years, they'd quietly restructured it, putting Emma in control of the assets and redirecting funds toward her expenses. Wedding costs, mortgage help, emergency support. Essentially, my parents had been dipping into what was partially mine to bankroll my sister's lifestyle. And the letter wasn't them separating from me. It was them covering their tracks. I sat there in silence for a long time, not even angry, just hollow. Because it hit me, they'd been using my name all along, probably to make the trust look legitimate for tax reasons. They'd benefited from it, and now, when things got messy, they were erasing me like I never existed. That was the moment everything broke. That night, I barely slept. I walked the house in silence, that letter replaying in my head like a bad song. Every word, every sentence felt like a confirmation of something I'd always suspected but never wanted to admit. That my family had never seen me as part of them, only as a tool. The next morning, I drove aimlessly. I didn't even know where I was going until I ended up parked outside an overlook by the coast. The kind of place I used to go when I needed to think. The waves were violent that day, crashing hard against the rocks below. The sky overcast and gray. I sat there for hours, just letting the world move without me. At one point, my phone buzzed. Another message from Mom. "Please don't make this worse, Noah. You've done enough damage already." No apology, no acknowledgement of what they'd done, just blame. That's when I realized something quietly, painfully simple. They were never going to understand. I could present proof, logic, evidence, and they'd still twist it until I was the villain. So I decided to stop explaining. For the next few weeks, I shut down. No calls, no emails, no business meetings. My partners handled most of the work while I drifted in a fog of exhaustion. Maya tried to help. She'd sit beside me in the evenings, silent, just holding my hand. But even she couldn't reach me fully. I felt like a ghost in my own life. Then, one night, as I was sitting on the back patio, watching the lights of the city below, she came out with 2 cups of coffee and said quietly, "You can't let them keep this power over you." I didn't answer. "You keep thinking closure means they'll admit they were wrong," she said. "They won't." Some people would rather rewrite the story than face it. Her words hung in the air. She was right. I'd been waiting for something that would never come. For them to see me, to say, "We were wrong, you mattered too." But all I'd gotten was a letter cutting me out of my own bloodline. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight them anymore. I was going to walk away completely. The next morning, I called my lawyer and told him to move forward with a full review of the trust. Not to contest it, not to reclaim it, just to have a record, proof something that couldn't be erased or twisted later. Then I called my accountant and started the process of moving every financial tie out of reach. New accounts, new security layers, even a new LLC structure under a different name. By the end of that week, there wasn't a single connection between me and my family that could be exploited. And yet, even as I cut those ties, the sadness lingered. I'd lost something deeper than money. I'd lost the illusion of family. I remember one evening in particular, early summer. The house quiet, the air heavy with the smell of rain. I found myself scrolling through old photos. Emma and me as kids building pillow forts in the living room. Mom smiling at us from behind the camera. Dad grilling in the background. It almost looked real, that image of a happy family. But memories are tricky. The mind edits them kindly. I shut the laptop and whispered, "That version's gone." After that, something changed in me. I started working again, not with obsession, but with purpose. I built quietly, methodically. I didn't talk about revenge. I didn't rant or lash out. I just focused. Maya once asked me what I was planning, and I told her the truth. Nothing dramatic, just peace. But if the truth ever comes out, and it will, I want to be ready. Months passed. The call slowed, then stopped. The Facebook posts were deleted, probably because the lawyer's letter had finally reached them. I started to feel human again. I traveled, I invested, I stayed off social media entirely. But peace is a fragile thing. One afternoon, about 6 months later, I got an email from an old family friend, Mrs. Carson, a neighbor from our childhood street. She'd always liked me, treated me like the son she never had. Her message was simple. "Noah, dear, I hope you're well. I thought you should know your parents are selling their house. Emma and Jacob are moving in with them for now." They mentioned something about starting over after some financial trouble. It sounds serious. Selling their house, starting over. I closed the laptop and sat there in silence. That's when it dawned on me. The trust money was gone. Every dollar. They'd drained it to prop up Emma's lifestyle until it collapsed under its own weight. And now, for the first time, they were facing consequences. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part, the smaller, more tired part, felt sorry for them. But pity has a short half-life. Because a week later, I found out something that changed everything again. I was out running errands when I stopped by the bank to handle some paperwork for my new company account. The banker, a friendly guy who'd helped me for years, pulled me aside. "Hey Noah," he said, "just a heads up. Your old joint account with your parents was recently accessed. There was an attempt to withdraw funds, but it was frozen automatically since it was marked inactive." I blinked. Wait, what joint account? He turned his screen around and showed me. Sure enough, there it was, an account created when I was 17. My dad must have opened it back then for college savings or something similar. They'd left my name on it for formality, and I'd forgotten it even existed. But it wasn't empty. There were a few $1,000s in there, probably remnants of something they'd never closed properly.
Good thing we caught it, the banker said. Otherwise, that money would have been gone.
I thanked him, left the bank, and sat in my car for a long time staring at the steering wheel. It was such a small thing, a forgotten account, a frozen withdrawal. But to me, it said everything. Even after everything they'd done, even after cutting me out, they were still trying to take what little was left with my name on it. And that's when I realized something, quietly, almost peacefully. I was done feeling sorry for them. Because people like that don't learn through kindness or guilt. They only understand consequence. So I started to plan, not out of rage, but out of precision. Not for money, not for revenge in the petty sense, for truth. Because if my family was going to destroy my name, I was going to make sure the world knew exactly who they were first. And soon enough, I'd have the perfect opportunity to do it. One that would come knocking all on its own. I just didn't know yet that when it did, it would drag every secret they'd ever buried into the light. The turning point didn't come with fireworks or some cinematic moment of triumph. It came quietly on a gray Tuesday morning when the fog hung low, and I was sipping coffee in the same kitchen where I once opened my father's letter. For the first time in months, I felt still. The kind of stillness that comes after a long storm, when the thunder finally gives up and all that's left is the hum of the world returning to normal. I had spent months detangling my life from my family's chaos. It was like pulling weeds from a garden. You think you've gotten them all, and then another root appears. But with every severed tie, I felt lighter. My lawyer finalized the paperwork, confirming that I was no longer associated with the Patterson Family Fund. My accountant had secured my assets and trusts that only I controlled. Every legal and financial vulnerability was locked away tight. But that wasn't what made life start to bloom again. It was the sense of space, emotional space. The first few weeks after cutting ties felt strange, like stepping out of a noisy room and realizing how loud the silence is. I didn't know who I was without the background noise of guilt and obligation. For most of my life, I'd been reacting, trying to prove something to people who didn't care. Now, for the first time, I was building for myself. Maya noticed the shift before I did. One morning, she looked up from her laptop and said, "You're different lately."
Different how?
"You're not checking your phone every 5 minutes waiting for another message from them." I smiled faintly. Guess I ran out of reasons to. She closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair. So what now? The truth was, I didn't know. But I had ideas. Ambitions I'd buried under years of trying to stay small. For months, I'd been approached by investors who wanted to expand my consultancy into something bigger, a global platform for independent developers. I'd always said no, mostly because the thought of managing that scale terrified me. But now, fear felt smaller than regret. So, I said yes. The next year became a blur of motion. I flew from city to city, built partnerships, hired new teams, and learned how to lead in ways I'd never been taught. I was careful with everything. No shortcuts, no inflated promises, no fake it till you make it. I had seen what deceit looked like up close. I wanted no part of it. There were setbacks, of course. Bad hires, long nights, burnout. But the difference was that this time, I wasn't doing it to prove something to anyone. I was doing it because I believed in it. And that belief, it turned out, was contagious. Within 18 months, our company had grown from a small consultancy into a full-fledged software firm with global contracts. Tech magazines started calling, and interviews followed. I avoided talking about my past, kept my answers focused on perseverance, discipline, teamwork, but the people who'd known me for years could sense it. This wasn't just business growth, it was personal evolution. The first time I saw my name in a Forbes article, Maya printed it out and taped it to the fridge, like a proud parent. "For the archives," she said with a grin. I laughed. "You act like I won a Nobel Prize." "You kind of did," she teased. "Just the tech version." Life began to feel full again. Trips abroad, new friends, long dinners that didn't end in arguments. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was carrying a version of myself that needed defending. And yet, in the quiet moments when I'd come home late and see the city lights shimmering outside the window, there was still that faint ache. The ache of knowing my family had no idea who I'd become. Or worse, that they did know and couldn't stand it. I tried not to dwell on it, but the universe has a way of testing how well you've really moved on. It started with a voicemail, another unknown number. I almost ignored it until curiosity got the better of me. The voice was formal, unfamiliar. "Hello, Mr. Patterson. This is Richard Caldwell, a state attorney representing the late Mr. and Mrs. Evans. I believe you were listed as a contact for their community outreach fund. Please return my call when you can." The Evanses were a retired couple who had lived 2 streets over from my childhood home. They were kind people, always inviting neighborhood kids to their porch for lemonade, always treating me kindly, even when my parents didn't. I hadn't spoken to them in years. When I called the attorney back, he explained that the Evanses had passed away a few months prior and had left behind an endowment, a scholarship fund for underprivileged students interested in computer science. "Your name came up," he said, "because they mentioned how you used to fix their computer for free when you were a teenager. They were very fond of you." I was quiet for a moment. "What do you need from me?" "They'd like you to oversee the fund. It's not large, but they trusted you to manage it honestly." I said, yes. Something about that request, simple, generous human, reminded me of who I used to be before all the noise. So I took the project seriously. I built an online platform for the scholarship, automated the application system, and personally reviewed the first batch of applicants. Within months, the program had funded its first 5 students. One of them wrote me a letter that said, "Thank you for believing in people you don't even know." That one sentence hit harder than any award ever could. From there, things accelerated. The scholarship gained traction. Local media picked it up, and soon we were collaborating with universities. It became a movement, a small one at first, but growing fast. People started to associate my name not just with business, but with opportunity. That's when the invitations started rolling in. Tech conferences, leadership panels, charity galas. I accepted a few, mostly out of curiosity. One evening at a business event in San Francisco, a journalist asked during a Q&A, "What motivates you now that you've achieved success?" I thought for a moment before answering. Freedom. The kind that comes from knowing no one owns a piece of you anymore. It wasn't rehearsed. It just came out naturally. But judging by the reaction, it resonated. That quote ended up circulating online. People reposted it, reworded it, shared it. It became one of those motivational lines you see on LinkedIn with someone's headshot in grayscale behind it. And while I didn't care much about internet fame, it served one unintended purpose. It reached them. I didn't know until months later. I was in New York wrapping up a meeting when Maya called. "You're not going to believe this," she said, half amused, half wary. "Your mom tried to reach out again." I froze. "What?" She sent a handwritten letter to the office, addressed to Mr. Noah Patterson, founder and CEO. Guess she saw the articles. I let out a slow breath. "What did it say?" Maya hesitated. "I haven't opened it. It's on your desk." When I got back, the envelope was sitting neatly beside my computer. Cream paper, elegant cursive, my mother's handwriting. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at it, remembering the last time she'd written me, the last time her words had cut me open. Eventually, I unfolded it. "Noah, we saw you on the news. Your father and I are proud of what you've accomplished, even if we don't always understand your choices. I know we've had our differences, but maybe it's time to put the past behind us. We're not getting any younger, and Emma could really use her brother right now. Things haven't been easy for her. Maybe we could have dinner sometime and talk things through. Family should stick together." There it was again, the same pattern wrapped in politeness, baited with guilt. I folded the letter back up and placed it in a drawer. Not out of anger, out of clarity. They hadn't changed. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted proximity to success. That realization didn't hurt this time. It just confirmed what I already knew. A week later, the company hosted a conference in Los Angeles. Over 200 people attended. Developers, investors, students, journalists. I gave a keynote speech about resilience and reinvention. Halfway through, I looked out at the crowd and spotted a young man near the back taking furious notes. He reminded me of myself at 20, nervous, eager, underestimated. After the talk, he came up to me. I just wanted to say, I read that article about you. My family doesn't really support what I'm doing either. Hearing your story, it helped. That was the moment I realized something important. I didn't need my old family anymore. I'd built a new one made of people who believed in me, who grew with me, who didn't measure my worth by how much I gave them. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Still, the story wasn't over. Because not long after that conference, just as everything was falling into place, I got another call, this time from an unknown number with a familiar area code. I answered, expecting maybe a journalist or a client. Instead, a quiet voice said, "Noah, it's Jacob." I froze. He sounded different, defeated. "I know you don't want to hear from me," he said, "but you need to know what's happening. It's about Emma and your parents." His next words made my heart sink, because as much as I had moved on, I wasn't ready for what he was about to tell me. And that single phone call would change everything all over again. Jacob's voice wavered on the line, the sound of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. "They're in trouble, Noah, real trouble." I leaned back in my chair, my tone calm but wary. "Define trouble." He hesitated. "The trust, it's gone, completely gone. Your dad's been borrowing against it for years, and the last investment he made tanked. Some real estate scheme. They owe close to $500,000 now. The house sale barely covered the mortgage." I didn't respond right away. I'd suspected the trust was dry, but hearing it confirmed was different. There was a hollow satisfaction in it, like watching a fire finally burn itself out. Jacob continued, his voice lower now. "They thought they could fix it by refinancing through a contact, someone they met through Emma's old business friend. But apparently the deal was fraudulent. They lost everything. They might face charges if they can't repay." I closed my eyes. "And you're telling me this because—" He exhaled shakily. "Because they're desperate. And your mom, she's saying things about you, that you owe them, that you're the reason they're in this mess, because you turned your back on family. She's talking about going public again, Noah, but this time, not just online. She's talking to reporters." That got my attention. "Reporters," I repeated slowly. "Yeah, some local outlet that runs those human interest stories. She wants to set the record straight, make it look like you built your fortune by exploiting your family's trust." I told her it was insane, but she won't listen. She keeps saying she has proof, bank statements, emails, old documents. She's convinced she can make it look like you stole from them. For a few seconds, all I could hear was my own breathing. It wasn't anger that hit me. It was clarity. Cold, precise clarity. "Jacob," I said quietly, "thank you for telling me." He sighed. "I'm not doing this for her. I'm doing it because Emma's scared. I think she finally realizes how far it's gone. But your parents, especially your mom, she won't stop until she destroys you." Then maybe it's time I stopped letting her try. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, my mind methodically piecing together everything I'd gathered over the past 2 years. Emails, screenshots, messages, financial records. I had enough evidence to prove my innocence 10 times over. But that wasn't enough anymore. This wasn't about defending myself. It was about ending the narrative permanently. Maya came into my office a few minutes later, coffee in hand. She didn't have to ask. She could read everything in my expression. What did they do now? "They're trying to frame me," I said simply. Her eyebrows lifted, but she didn't look surprised. "Then it's time to tell the truth." I nodded. "All of it." Over the next week, I put everything in motion. I reached out to my company's PR team, not to bury the story, but to prepare for it. If my family wanted to make this public, I'd meet them there. Except this time, I control the story. But I didn't stop there. I called my lawyer and authorized a full audit of the Patterson family fund. We already had documentation, but I wanted an official certified report. I wanted every transaction, traced every cent that had been diverted, every loan taken, every expense labeled under Emma's support. If they wanted to drag me into the spotlight, I was going to bring the receipts. 2 weeks later, the audit was complete. The findings were brutal. My name had been used dozens of times to authorize disbursements I never knew about. My parents had falsified digital consent forms using my outdated e-signature template from when I worked for them years ago. They'd effectively stolen from me under my own name. And now, facing financial ruin, they were about to publicly accuse me of doing it. So, I waited. 3 days later, it happened. An article appeared in the Midland Tribune titled, "Tech CEO's Family Claims Betrayal. He Built His Empire with Our Money." The story was full of emotional quotes from my mother and father. Emma wasn't quoted, probably too ashamed or too scared to add her name. The article painted them as sympathetic, struggling parents left behind by a greedy son. What they didn't know was that I'd been expecting it. By that evening, my statement was ready, calm, measured, professional. My PR team released it across all channels with supporting documents. Not opinion, just facts. All financial activities tied to the Patterson Family Trust were conducted without my consent. I have cooperated fully with authorities and have submitted verified audits proving misuse of my name and assets by other parties. I hope those involved get the help they need. I will not be commenting further. But there was one more thing. Alongside that statement, I uploaded a series of public documents to a shared legal repository open to journalists, investigators, and the public. Redacted for privacy, but comprehensive. The audit, the falsified e-signatures, the transaction logs, every piece of evidence showing exactly how the money had been drained. And within hours, the narrative flipped. The same outlet that published the smear story ran an update. New evidence contradicts Patterson family's claims. Audit suggests fraudulent use of CEO's identity. By the next morning, the news had spread beyond the local papers. National outlets picked it up. Financial blogs, tech sites, even a few business ethics podcasts. The story wasn't about me being a villain anymore. It was about a family scandal, a betrayal that cut the other way. I didn't gloat. I didn't post a victory tweet or make any statements. I let the truth do the talking. But the real moment of poetic justice came a few days later, when my lawyer forwarded me a message from the county prosecutor's office. They were launching an investigation into the misuse of trust funds and identity fraud. The potential defendants? My parents. It wasn't revenge I felt then. It was release. Still, I didn't want them destroyed. I didn't want prison or public humiliation. What I wanted was for the world to finally see the truth and for them to face it. So I made one final move. Through a mutual contact at the Tribune, I arranged an interview, not about my family, but about resilience. We talked about integrity, about choosing peace over retaliation, about what happens when you finally stop chasing approval. The interviewer asked if my upbringing had influenced who I'd become. I smiled and said, in every possible way. Sometimes the best lessons come from the worst teachers. It was subtle, but everyone who needed to understand it did. After that, the noise died down. My parents' accusations fizzled under legal scrutiny. Their assets were seized temporarily pending investigation. Emma moved out of their home, filing for separation from Jacob a few months later. I didn't interfere. I didn't reach out. I'd done enough. But one evening, as the sun set behind the hills, I found myself standing in the same spot on my patio where I'd once read my father's letter. I thought about everything. The years of silence, the betrayal, the slow unraveling of a family that had mistaken control for love. And I realized something. I hadn't just survived them. I'd outgrown them. The next morning, I made one last call to my lawyer. Can we make sure the trust investigation stays public record? I asked. He hesitated. You sure? Most people want to keep that private. I want transparency, I said. Let it stand as a record for anyone who ever tries to twist the story again. He paused, then said quietly, understood. That was it. My quiet revenge. No shouting, no revenge plot worthy of a movie, just truth laid bare for the world to see. And yet, deep down, I knew the fallout hadn't even begun. Because people like my parents didn't just crumble overnight. They fought back, even when there was nothing left to fight for. And when the final confrontation came, it wouldn't be through lawyers or news stories. It would be face to face. And I had a feeling it was coming soon. It happened 6 months later on an ordinary morning that didn't feel like the end of anything. The air was cool, the sky half clouded, and I was walking through the atrium of my office building when the front desk called up to tell me someone was waiting in the lobby. When I came down, it was them, my parents. They looked smaller somehow, like time had compressed them. My father's once proud shoulders were slumped, his hair thinned and gray. My mother clutched her purse like a shield, her eyes darting around the lobby, terrified someone might recognize her. They both stood when I approached, as if instinctively still trying to perform dignity even now. "Noah," my mother said first. Her voice was low, shaky, like a violin that had lost its tune. We just wanted to talk." I didn't say anything. I just gestured toward a private meeting room. Inside, the silence felt heavy, like we were sitting inside the echo of everything that had happened. My father cleared his throat. "You've made your point." I raised an eyebrow. "My point? You embarrassed us," he said, his tone brittle. "Dragged our name through the mud. We can't go anywhere without people whispering. Do you have any idea what that's like?" I let out a small, disbelieving laugh. "You accuse me of theft and fraud in the press. You forged my name on financial documents, and you're worried about whispers?" My mother flinched. "We were desperate," she said softly. "We didn't know what else to do. You wouldn't talk to us and Emma." "Emma's an adult," I interrupted. "She made her choices." Dad leaned forward, his voice rising. "We did what we thought was best for this family." I met his eyes evenly. "No, you did what was best for Emma. Always." That shut him up. For a long time, no one said a word. The hum of the air conditioning was the only sound. Finally, my mother spoke again, tears brimming. "We lost everything, Noah. The house, the savings, the trust. Your father's pension is gone. We don't even know where we're going to live next month." I watched her closely. The guilt, the desperation, it was all there. But beneath it, I could still see the flicker of expectation. That tiny spark that said she still thought I might save them. Because I always had. But not anymore. "I'm sorry you're going through that," I said quietly. "Truly. But I'm not the solution to it." Her lip trembled. "You'd really let your own parents end up on the street?" I took a breath. "You let your own son drown for 30 years because his pain didn't fit your narrative. I begged for your love, your approval, your respect, and you gave me conditions. You used my name when it suited you and erased it when it didn't. So yes, I'm done saving people who never wanted me to exist on my own." She stared at me speechless. My father looked down at the table, his jaw working like he wanted to speak but couldn't. I stood. "There's a fund," I said finally, "for families who need emergency housing. I'll make a donation in your names. You can apply if you qualify." My father's head snapped up. "You think we're charity?" I met his glare evenly. "I think that's all that's left." He stood too, his face red, trembling with a mix of rage and shame. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "One day you'll realize money can't fill the hole where family should be." I tilted my head. "You're right, but peace can." He froze at that. My mother started crying quietly as I walked to the door. I paused just for a second, long enough to say what I'd wanted to say my entire life. "I forgive you," I said softly. "But that doesn't mean I'll ever let you hurt me again." And then I walked out. They didn't follow. A week later, I heard from a mutual contact that they'd moved into a small apartment on the edge of town. The investigation closed without charges, just a permanent mark on their records, and the forfeiture of everything they had left. Emma filed for bankruptcy, moved out of state, and started working again. I never reached out, and she never called. The noise finally stopped. Months passed, seasons changed. The world moved on, and so did I. One evening, I found myself sitting on the patio again, the same spot where all of this had begun, watching the sun sink into the horizon. The air was golden, the quiet deep. Maya came outside and handed me a glass of wine, settling beside me. "Do you ever think about them?" she asked gently. "Sometimes," I said, "but not with anger anymore, just distance." She nodded. "You won, you know." I smiled faintly. "No, I just stopped playing." The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the yard. For a moment, I thought about my younger self, the boy who once believed love had to be earned, who thought silence was safety.
I wished I could tell him that peace doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself. As the last light faded, I raised my glass slightly and whispered, half to myself, "Here's to letting go." And for the first time in my life, I meant it.